Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Politics on the Hindu's YouTube channel. This is a show where we go behind the scenes on stories on domestic politics. I'm Nistula Hebbar, the political editor of The Hindu and your host for this show. Now, this week again, we will be going to Bihar, where assembly polls are due sometime in the next few months. We will be joined by a renowned political scientist, Professor Ashwani Kumar. He's the author of well-regarded books such as Community Warriors, States, Peasants and Private Caste Armies in Bihar and Migrants, Mobility and Citizenship in India that came out in 2022 in the midst of the COVID exodus of migrant workers. And it is an important insight into the lives of migrants in often unforgiving urban scapes. He has also been deeply involved in policy interventions with the Ministry of Rural Development and with the Election Commission of India. He has often been the one that I turn to for an insightful look at politics and polls. And I welcome him on Talking Politics for another such interaction. Welcome, Professor Kumar.
Thank you, Nistala, so much. Nice to be back here. With Hindu. The Hindu team is always vibrant team.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And let's jump right into the questions. The first is about a generalized look at how are you looking at the contest that is building up in Bihar coming into the polls. And will this vote chori campaign that is now being run by the constituents of the Mahagathbandhan have the effect of mobilizing support for the opposition?
Yeah, looks like Bihar has always, politically volatile and always interesting, a theater is kind of energized, So to that extent, I guess this vote chori is only a rhetoric, Let me clarify this issue. Given the track record of incredible electoral performance by Election Commission of India in the country and especially in Bihar, so those who are watching and listening to us must remember that there is a deep memory in Bihar and Biharis about the role played by ex-chief of Election Commission T.N. Session. Never forget that. This is only a surface rhetoric, In the end, if you go to, the hamlets where the poor live, the Dalits live, they remember that the right to vote in Bihar, first time in their political history or imagination, was made sure by none other than Election Commission of India and especially T.N. Session. I don't think, and this turns out to be, based on my own assessment and understanding of Bihar, kind of a negative campaign, So sometimes, as a political scientist, negative campaign gives you energy for a short while, but it doesn't get translated into substantive political outcomes. So it's very clear that, by a few weeks, within a few weeks, the roles will be sanitized and ensured. I'm sure that Election Commission will once again prove to the world that they have done incredible work.
Okay, so with regard to the larger contest in Bihar, I mean, this is just one mobilizing campaign that's going on. But of course, we all know that, community and communitarian mobilization also matters and several things which become of immediate importance, in the run up to the election. Certain things, manifestly become important. And there are certain underlying sort of issues. Now, I find that there are two unpredictables as of now. I don't know how much of they will be once we are close to the polling date, but certainly as of now, it is the health of Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar and his political future and the length of his political future going ahead. And of course, the launch of this Suraaj party by Prashant Kishor, political strategist Prashant Kishor. And nobody is quite sure about who he is going to be hurting so much. What is your view on these two unpredictables?
Nistulaji, let me come back to this issue. We have been covering for the last, 5 years. I'm the one, coined the phrase, millennial politicians in Bihar.
Right.
And you remember every time, Nitish did suffer, 2020 elections, partly because of Corona and partly because of the structural of the change in the politics in India and especially rise of aspirational voters with the migrants were coming back and kind of infusing the land of Bihar with new aspirations, But every time, let me come back because I have written extensively about it. Whenever we try to dismiss Nitish ji, he's back. I mean, like I remember, there is a folk song in Bihar, a very famous song, picturized in Tisri Kasam. If you recall that folk song, where, you know, for that Hiraman, and his friends are singing, Pigde wali muniya le gayi. So every time, when we try to dismiss this,
Raj Kapoor and Wahida Rahman. Hmm.
yeah, brilliant. So so this is where the Nitish Kumar not look at we don't have the details, and I'm sure as from the public appearance of Nitish Kumar, it seems to be going strong. And let us look at the brand Nitish Kumar. So that the brand Nitish Kumar continues to work and remains relevant. So I don't think is unpredictable. But let's look at the X factor. It no longer the X factor, but it becomes X factor when it is combined with Prime Minister Modi's brand in Bihar. So what I'm looking at, my short verdict, I'm looking at that, election scenario, maybe 2-3 months are still ahead, in terms of the elections. But looks like, in Bihar, this time, bar Nitish Kumar, that is happening since 2005, both as a Bihari and as a political scientist working on Bihar. But this time, the bar Nitish Kumar will be a little different, This time, you this was NDA ki sarkar. If you look at political imagination of PR, this time everybody is talking about NDA ki sarkar. And this is where, the personality, the persona, and the brand of Nitish Kumar is still relevant. And at the same time, there is a subtle change also.
Okay, he is also, I think, delving into a lot of Kejrinomics, which is, 300 units of electricity free and several other things that he has. I think today, the day that we are recording this is a Friday. It is August 29th. He's again called for a cabinet meeting, the second cabinet meeting in a week, which is a little rare for any government. And people are expecting that he will be making other such announcements as well. But what about Prashant Kishor?
Prashant Kishor is quite interesting, I mean, like, we have been looking at Prashant Kishor ji and his Jan Swaraj party.
Right.
And if you just look at, very briefly, because see, a lot of people and my colleagues are comparing Prashant Kishor to Aam Aadmi Party, and it's sort of, urban resurrection. I remember some of my colleagues, celebrity colleagues, reflecting back on Aam Aadmi Party, called it, resurrection or insurrection, kind of politics of India. That didn't happen in Indian politics. But I don't think, because it's a precise comparison between Jan Swaraj Party and PK's Jan Swaraj Party. It's gonna be, and my projections suggest that this is like a beginning, So if you look at the next generation of politics or politician in VR, he will be there, no doubt about it, but not in 2025 elections.
Oh, that he's been saying to a lot of his friends privately as well, that his actual aim is 2030, but he does feel that he will make some inroads. And in his usual style, he told me, he says, either I'll be, less than 10% vote, or I'll be three-figure tally. So I don't know how much you agree with that.
My sense is following, looking at the modest performance in the by-elections that happened last year, and based on my recent visits at Bihar between 24 and 25, where I covered not in central Bihar but north Bihar, I think he has made some, some impact, This is a mobilizational impact, awareness impact he has done, and he is able to connect to, aspirational voters, youth voters, young people, migrating out of Bihar. That's there, But if you look at the performance part, let's look at, move from rhetoric to performance part. In the student agitation in Patna, December, I mean, like, the results are mixed, because he couldn't deliver what he was expected to deliver. And that, I remember, talking to people and channels also, because that was a golden moment, If you look at current, crop of leadership in Bihar, they have come out of the great, churning, in terms of the student politics, whether it's Nitish Kumar, Lalu.
In fact, this brings me to the To the other question that I needed to ask you, you had said even in 2020 that this is like the beginning of the end for the post emergency leadership that had dominated Bihar politics. Are you joining it with that? This phenomena of Prashant Kishor and his appeal?
This was supposed to have happened, in 2020, but the politics is quite, is a whimsy stuff, and Fortuna is so fickle-minded. My sense is, following that it has delayed, but something is inevitable, has to happen.
I
So
find
what I
that
was looking at Prashant Kishore is not coming out of Nistula, is from a really powerful student movement. He had got the opportunity, he could not capitalize on that moment. The reason is following that if you look at the base and superstructure of the Jan Suraaj, it's neither a movement party nor a really grassroots, NGO kind of mobilization. Is a top is elite, bureaucrats, former bureaucrats heading, and at the ground, volunteers. And that too, especially in urban area. So my estimate is following. He will be able to cut through some 10 to 15 constituencies, and I would be surprised if we can get, double digit. My sense is 5 to 6 seats.
okay. And what about this? Will this be the election where we'll see off the age of emergency leadership, do you think? Which didn't happen in 2020.
This is just look at, Sambhavi. So just look at Sambhavi. Sambhavi.
This is Shambhavi Chaudhary, who's the Lok Sabha MP, and she's from the LJP, right?
LJP. Just look at, Sambhavi alone symbolizes, a different kind of politics that would come out of, in the post-emergency era in Bihar. And look at, Sambhavi. Sambhavi is not a typical, traditional, conventional Dalit politician. It's a symbol of, new Bihar, Naya Bihar. And let's give credit to Nitish ji, because that Naya Bihar since 2005 has largely been made by Nitish Kumar ji. So the generation is ready. I mean, look at Chirag Paswan. My sense is more than, PK, Chirag is X Factor.
Oh,
Chirag is
okay.
definitely X Factor.
He was the X Factor the last time round as well.
Yeah, he did. He did what
He got one seat, but he made the JDU lose at least 12 seats, if I'm not wrong. He was the X Factor in the last election.
And if the Bihar elections went to the Bihar largely because of him, if you look at 17 constituency, 10 constituency results were decided by less than 1,000 votes. So he was X Factor in 2020. He is again X Factor in 2025. And and this is where NDA, I mean, like the news that I'm sharing with you, and the big news that compared to what others are suggesting, my sense is that this time 2020 won't be repeated. In fact, they will get a clear majority. I mean,
Wow. Now this is. I think I will edit this little thing and keep it with me so that the day the results come out, I will bring it out in whichever way.
please, I don't want to be wrong, and I don't want to be, deleting. Not gonna tweet now, but my sense is, looking at two things, on this. The first is, the electoral analysis. 2024 elections. If you look at the analysis, 177 constituencies they led, NDA. And
Yes, but Professor Kumar, they always say that the way Bihar votes for a general election is pretty different from how they vote for the state elections. Delhi ke liye to Modi, they'll want Modi, but when it comes to the state, then they might have a different choice altogether.
so this is where I'm coming. I'm looking at how NDA, with the two brands, PM Modi and CM Nitish Kumar, gonna use and differently. This election is not aspirational election as we projected 2020 elections. This looks like consolidation of what I would call governance surplus or development surplus. If you look at 1 crore jobs promise, youth commission, and these new announcements that CM has been making clearly indicates that more than the micro social engineering in terms of the caste and caste alliances, in fact, and if you add, what everybody is talking about, demographic logic, the Guspatiya logic, the especially is going to work in Bihar. And especially I traveled across North Bihar, and I could tell you that there is this lodging building up right now in Vichipul. And let's not forget what my colleagues suggest to, a kind of a silent, public space building up in favor of, this kind of a mobilization in Bihar. At this point of time, everybody is talking about vote chori, but if you do deeper analysis of the Bihar, when you go to the ICTS center or a midday meal that is being carried out in schools of Bihar, you will certainly find, or supply of the drinking water in villages of Bihar, or electricity. So that development surplus, I'm sure, will benefit NDA this time in getting more than 125 seats. That's where
You're really running down
will
the
surprise everyone.
you're really running down the RJD.
No, no.
But for many years, caste equations have remained set in Bihar. Are there any signs of communitarian voting patterns changing here?
Let me come back. So in some way, what is the advantage for RJD is also liability, as per, data analysis, So they seem to have saturated their social engineering. So they're pretty much, I'm not suggesting that they won't be, dominant in that sense, in the positional sense. But I'm not looking at that prospect where they will be winning the elections of Bihar.
So this communitarian voting,
I don't think so.
this caste equation and communitarian voting that we spoke about. You don't think that the RJD has been able to transcend the MY combination so far?
From the grounds, if you look at, I mean, like RJD had been making attempt, but on the other end, if you look at, Pasmanda Muslim, politics in Bihar, people are not paying attention to that. In fact, outside, that there is a Pasmanda constituency coming up in Bihar. So it's not easy for RJT or India bloc to take them for granted, within that large MOI, except, Yadavs, according to survey, reports and data analysis, majority of them would continue to vote. That's the strength, but the liability. So I think, RJD has not succeeded. In fact, one of the big gain for RJD for this election is Mukesh Sahni, the Malas.
VIP party.
If you look, 4% of the Malas, Kewards and other castes,
Yeah.
if they swing back to NDA will go for decisive victory.
Okay. And if they go to Mahagadbandhan? If they stay with the Mahagadbandhan then?
Yeah, so they are really giving some solidity, some strength, especially in what we call riverine constituencies of Bihar. So this is where a lot Nistula depends on seat adjustment A, candidate selection B, and the way they are going to accommodate Mukesh Sahni's party. So that's an interesting development that has happened. We are still 2-3 months away from the elections, but that's something. But that's one part. But if you look at the larger chunk of EBC, they continue to support NDA in multiple ways. And this is where
That's where the election actually hangs, I think, no? EBC support.
yeah. I mean, like if you say that EBC and also Dalit. Yeah. Let's not rule out the impact of Chirag Paswan, and also let's look at closely the rising political significance and salience of Dalits in Bihar. On the one hand, you have millennial aspirational leader Chirag Paswan. On the other hand, you have Machiji. I mean, like his son Suman. He's the next generation, post-emergency leader in Bihar. So that way, Bihar is transitioning and opening the gate to a very exciting Dalit politics, little different from UP, where, from Bhola Paswan Shastri, Ramvilas Paswan, Jitan Ram Manji, to now you have Suman, and then, Sambhavi, you have, Chirag Paswan. So very interesting. And this entire Dalit combination and the combo, if you combine with EBC, becomes a very strong force for NDA. So that's where, seats and candidate selections will determine the outcomes of the elections.
Okay, women have been a strong pillar of support for the NDA. In fact, in the 2020 election, Prime Minister Modi said as much in his victory speech at the BJP headquarters, after the Bihar polls. And he said he owes the victory to Nari Shakti. And both Nitish Kumar and Prime Minister Modi have gone out of their way to cultivate this constituency, so to speak. How do you see them situated in this poll?
That's something I'm sure Biharis and non-Biharis are looking at Bihar elections seriously. This is the only place in the country where women itself has emerged a solid constituency. Nowhere else. Nowhere else you can see. You have traveled widely, and you have been covering elections for last 20 years.
Since
So
2005, the year with the two elections.
yeah, even in Kerala, women hasn't emerged the kind of solid constituency that women has become in Bihar. One reason, let's look at one big reason, is the memory of the Jangal Raj. I mean, the women prices most is the regular law and order
Security,
procedure. Yeah. This is something where whenever I go to the village and look at, these changing, caste combinations and communitarian combinations, one thing is constant, that, women still prefer a government that can give them law and order and security in everyday life. B, and some people may call it a secular constituency. I call it as an independent constituency with its own, there are two types of voting. As a political scientist, we look at either sociotropic, means community voting, or the pocket voting. The most women I have spoken to in Bihar had worked on, NRGA and NRLM, Jivika, etc.
Jivika program, yes.
That kind of a constituency is something that has been created by Prime Minister Modi and Nitish Kumar together. And if you look at the data since 2005, whenever NDA, whenever JDU and BJP together, they create this surplus and the governance, constituency for women. This is something quite interesting, and if that can be tapped into and that can be utilized based on solid micro social engineering with good candidate selections, I'm sure women by and large. And also look at, one of the reasons why women are very critical to this time, because migrants will be coming home. But remember one thing, the migration has also allowed, as our colleagues have documented, and I have written also in my book, women greater political agency than in other places of the country. So take it together structurally and politically, I think Bihar elections, more than caste, will be decided by women this time.
Oh, that's an interesting and important point that you made. And from what our discussion kind of informs me, 2025 is all very fine. I'm actually anticipating the 2030 elections, which would show the politics of the next 30 years, I think, for that state. But even so, with elections looming, every election is of interest. And certainly, Bihar has always been one of the most politically significant states in India in terms of people's movements, in terms of political movements and ideological developments. And thank you so much, Professor Ashwani Kumar, for joining me today on Talking Politics and sharing your insights with us. You have given us two very firm declarations, A, that you anticipate that the NDA will be winning, and that you also anticipate that more than caste and community, women will be the decisive vote in Bihar this time. Thank you so much, all of you who have kept faith with us and have listened to this very interesting discussion, at least for me. And thank you so much for watching. I shall see you next week.